Frontline. This is the TGI edition of Frontline on Differences Television. It's good to have you join us this beautiful Friday morning, the very 23rd.
Yeah, 23rd.
Wow, that's good. 23rd day in the month of January 2026, and it's going, to unlead gradually. My name is Shegun Fumi Oyedokun. You're welcome on board.
Yes, many thanks for joining us again on Frontline this wonderful Friday morning. It's the TGI edition of Frontline, and it's a program where we keep you abreast of happenings across the nation. And of course, Friday episode is also a time for us to shout out to everyone who have celebrated their birthdays during the course of the month, and for subsequent birthdays, even as we also go through the month of January. So happy birthday to every January birthday celebrant, and for people who are also celebrating one win or the other, wedding anniversary and every other good things you might have celebrated in the month of January and subsequent days in the month of January. Want to say congratulations to you. This is Frontline coming to you from New Frontiers Television, and we are so delighted to have you joining us on this TGI edition of the program.
Yes, this is the TGI edition of the program. This is where we ensure that we tune down a bit, about what's been happening over what has been happening over the week. And yes, notwithstanding, it's every segment, we practically, talk about live perspective events, happenings, views. And yes, how we do it. You join the conversation, right here on New Frontiers Television. So today is not going to be an exception, as we are ready to ensure that you are part of this conversation. That's why we have our number, right there on the screen. You can call in, to the studio, or you can decide to, send us a WhatsApp message with the same number right on the screen, and we will be right here to ensure that you're part of the conversation. Now, the topic we'll be discussing today, it's another topic that has to do with the human angle. You don't want to miss that part. A lot of persons, have been a victim, and a lot of persons, either directly or indirectly, have taken part in this situation, and thus we need to begin to look at the menace, that's been ravaging our society. And our job as media personnel is to ensure that we sensitize the society about these happenings and how we can forestall future occurrences. So you don't want to miss that part of the program today. And of course, we'll also take a look at what we have on the front pages of our national dailies, that we keep us abreast of what is happening or what has happened in some couple of hours to before now, and we will have a better understanding of how the weekend it's gonna look like. All right, let me begin by saying that I was a plan for the weekend.
Nothing special, nothing more.
Okay.
Just to relax and perhaps go out few places and just to unwind.
All right, that's the spirit, unwind while you try and refresh yourself, for the new week. I think that's the spirit that we should begin to, imbibe these days.
This January, this 2026.
Generally. We're discussing something, recently about how your peace should come from within, and no one is gonna be, able to, be the architect of your happiness.
Exactly.
It should come from you yourself. So you know how these song, when you have bad energy, let them to butter jaw. You understand? Yeah. So if you have anyone, we're gonna give you a negative vibe, bad energy, tell them to step out of your way. Exactly. All right, a lot to talk about today.
Positive energy all the way.
Positive energy all the way. That's what we're going to be doing in the year 2026. I think it's not too bad if you say that will be our watchword, for the year 20.
Positive energy, good vibes.
Good vibes. Yeah, positive energy, good vibes. I can remember for 2024, 2025. No grief for anybody. I think
exactly. 2024. No grief for anybody.
All right, so 2025, 2026 rather, we want to make it like, positive vibe, good energy.
Exactly.
But that's what, should drive us for this year 2026. All right, a lot to talk about, but let's take a break. And when we come back, we will take a look at what is trending in Nigeria. We'll be right back. Just stay with us. Thank you for staying with us on eFrancis Television this morning. We'll be taking a look at a few other things, that are trending. And let me start with the issue of insecurity, it's been, the forefront of the conversation in recent time since the last year, 2025, where the United States got the United States President Donald Trump, did label Nigeria as a country of concern.
Particular
concern. Yeah, thank you for that.
That adjective is important.
All right, of a particular concern. And this has actually began that actually began that of the interest of the whole world in Nigeria as a country. And yes, now I'll be at the wake of several persons who have called and mentioned through the United States also and the public international platforms on how the issue of kidnapping and killing and banditry has ravaged Nigerians. All right, now the United States this morning have raised another serious concern about Nigeria's ability to protect the Christian communities, following the recent abduction of about 177, worshippers in Kaduna State. Don't forget that this happened, in the course of the week. That was last Sunday, and yes, bandits were seen just yesterday moving freely through forest corridors with their captive days after some storming the church, without resistance. And on Sunday, in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State, was where we have about 177 kid worshippers, were whisked away. And it was recorded that 11 managed to escape, while 166 are still in captivity. And this is not just just one church, yes, worshippers from one single church,
5 churches,
but it was from different churches, about 2-3 churches, from there. And yes, the United States is actually making a statement again, as they will be sending high-level delegation of their officials to Nigeria to have a week-long diplomatic tour to review this counter-terrorism effort and protection of the vulnerable religions across Africa, Middle East, and Europe. And don't forget that December 25 was the very first time the United States launched a counter-attack against terrorism in Nigeria.
Yeah, the meeting is part of the United States-Nigeria Joint Work Group and was co-chaired by the National Security Advisor, that is Nuhu Ribadu, and the U.S. under Secretary of State for Political Affairs, Alison Uka, and it took place amid heightened diplomatic tensions after U.S. President Donald Trump redesignated Nigeria as a country of particular concern over alleged religious freedom violations. However, the federal government has repeatedly dismissed claims of systemic Christian persecution, maintaining that insecurity affects citizens of all religious background, and this is the same narrative that the federal government has been pushing out to Nigerians as regards the issue of genocide, in which the United States of America has declared the country as a country of particular concern. And one thing that baffles me about this issue of Kajuru local government, where we have 177 worshippers and some escape, hence why we have 166 worshippers still in the captive of their abductors, is how the whole thing happened, how they were whisked away without any notice, without nobody saying them.
Yeah, resistance from
exactly.
Any of the,
because looking at
agencies.
177 is not a small number. 177 people being whisked away and no security agency. How did they even carry them outside that local government? Is it through bike? Is it through bus? A lot of questions have been going on the mind of Nigerians as regards this. Well, as it is now, I think this issue, fine, as much as we might say that insecurity is not peculiar to a particular region, it's the thing that affects whether you are a Christian or a Muslim or a traditional worshipper. But it still brings us back to the point that we haven't seen an end to the issue of insecurity. And it seems that our security architecture has been compromised, because it's not that easy for you in just one local government to whisk away 177 people without nobody coming to their rescue, security agencies, security personnel that could have maybe stopped the abduction from happening. So it's a lot as far as this is insecurity issue is concerned.
Yet it's a lot, as far as this insecurity is concerned. And yes, our President Tinubu rather has authorized expanded security deployment, enhanced intelligence coordination and stronger investigation into these various religious communities, attacks into various religious communities, and also ensuring that perpetrators would be tracked and prosecuted. And yes, that's what reports that we'll have, and that what we'll give you now. Let's see how far this is gonna turn out to be, because yes, we had the first launch from the United States to Sokoto. There was said to be a base in Sokoto, and the attack focused on that on December 25, and since then it looks like the activities have not subsided, anyhow. And yes, even Kaduna State, it's been a while that Kaduna State experienced these, and it's not just any part of Kaduna State this time around. It's the southern Kaduna State, where we have, predominantly Christians, in that state. And yes, we see how far the government, would be able to bring out good results for these situations. All right, now let's move away from politics. On that short break, moving ahead now, away from the security matter in Nigeria. Yes, we still have more stories on the security, but yes, let's move away from that for now and move straight to a bit of politics. There's some speculations around, here and there, the wake of the issues surrounding the People's Democratic Party and some of the members who have decided to defect to other parties. Now, let's take a look at Osun State, where they have the governor of Osun State who will be seeking second time in office, would have decided to, decided to seek that on a different platform. Yeah, simply because there has been back and forth issue in PDP. Don't forget that at the wake of the November convention of the People's Democratic Party, which was held in Ibadan, where new executives and the suspensions were given to some individuals, there was another rancor that happened in the headquarters in Abuja, where now the PDP now has two different factions, been, run. Yes, the governor of your state, that's Governor Seyi Makinde, has now reaffirmed his commitment above all speculations that he will be leaving the party. He did reaffirm his commitment to the People's Democratic Party, declaring that his effort in the opposition party, declaring his comfort in the opposition party despite a growing wave of high-profile defection, to the All Progressive Congress. He did mention that he is comfortable in the People's Democratic Party, and that was where he had a conversation, when he had a closed-door meeting with President Tinubu, in Abuja, the State House in Abuja. It is disclosed that his visit to the president, has been focused on the governance matter affecting the nation rather than political consideration. And there, it did mention that he has gone to discuss the governance issue with the president. The governor stressed that he is willing to work with the president of matter of national interest, and his party allegiance remained unwavering. And this is at the wake of speculations after he met with the president on Thursday, with the Plateau State governor. They think there's speculations around, there's stories around, which they says that maybe he's looking for opportunity, to defect to the All Progressive Party, or rather, since they've had several allegations to, one of which is the 50 billion naira, which was supposed to be released to Oyo State government at the wake of the January blast explosion, that we had in Bodija area of Ibadan. And yes, it was said that about 30 billion naira, was already disbursed. Right, that's all information.
Yeah, the governor also argued that maintaining a strong opposition was essential to Nigeria's democratic health, particularly as the country prepares for the 2027 general election. And he argued that harmonious relations with the ruling party on governance matters did not constitute a departure from the PDP principles. And Makinde noted that leaders had a responsibility to work together on issues transcending party lines, particularly matters of national security and poverty alleviation. And this is also coming in the wake of the recent visit of the Kano State Governor to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, when people also speculated that perhaps it's going to defect to the APC. There have been a massive defection to the APC, which is now the main ruling party in the country. And it's quite unfortunate that the crisis, the internal political crisis rocking the People's Democratic Party lingers. It's still very, very much lingering as far as that party is concerned. I saw an headline of recent that said that Makinde is the only man standing in the political party, and it breaks the heart that the once major opposition party in the country has become the shadow of itself, giving to the mass defection that rock the political party. In Osun State, we have the governor defecting to Accord Party since the internal crisis is really affecting his second term ambition to be the governor of the state. And also in Ondo State, it was reported that the PDP is not even appearing in the ballot paper as well. So, fine, internal political crisis is not peculiar to the People's Democratic Party. We have the Labour Party also having their own fair share, and every other political party. But I think that what matters is how PDP, because most of the people that Nigerians believe should have come on board to ensure that this state engineer Oluseyi Makinde, cross our fingers to see how they.
Yes, Nigerians, have they're formidable. And, Labour Party also had
exactly. Even the SDP.
Yes, they were in court yesterday, where different faction, are still recognized by the Independent National Electoral Commission. So, all this is just at the wake of several political moves for the year 2027. Not just that, some offset election, which will begin this very year, like Osun State will be at the forefront by August. Yes, we've got Ondo State, and yes, Anambra State also will be having this in the course of the year. So we have, these that matter. Now, let's move to another germane topic, or other sector in Nigeria that will and can not be taken off, when it comes to this issue of the growth of a country. I don't forget that there's been back and forth, conversation with the federal government on the issue of education in Nigeria, where recently the long-term agreement between the federal government and ASU, and which does not, have it where it looks like there is light at the end of the tunnel with a recent strike that ASU has proposed, and yes, meetings with the federal government, has been did promise that yes, there would be a turnaround and reforms. How much it will be added as increment, to some of these lecturers in the university. Now, what do we have this morning? President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has revealed that one, improve the quality, two, and ensure, and the third one is to ensure that learning outcomes are outlined.
Yeah, noting that the nation could rise beyond the quality of its human capital, and no sustainable development could be achieved without skilled education and empower citizenry. And he added that his administration was also putting emphasis on the welfare of academic and non-academic staff and students, which was what GN and HASU agreements. He also stated these at the University of Lagos. 56th convocation ceremony for the award by the Minister of Education, that is Dr. Tunji Alausa, and said that the federal government had embarked on several legacy projects, including NEL Fund, to reform the education sector. So far so good. We can see some of the reforms of this renewed hope agenda of President Bola Tinubu has also been aligned with the development of education. And just as the president mentioned, that a nation that wants to grow or that want to develop will not water down the power of education for its citizen. And thank God that some of this reform are channeled towards developing educational system in the country. Just talk about the welfare package for the lecturers in Nigerian universities, and NEL Fund is one of the laudable initiative of the president to help students who might have financial challenges in seeing themselves through school. And these reforms are also channels to see to it that education in Nigeria can compete with global standard.
That's it. Education needs to be taken seriously. And yesterday, we had a guest, Dr. Faye, was here, where he was talking about the funding of universities
Universities.
in Nigeria. I did may remember that Adela did ask the question about the underfunding, of researches in Nigeria. I did mention that yes, researches, are in pipelines of the education in Nigeria, but more needed to be done. I think that's the spirit. More needed to be done, and we should be at a point where our diversification will also go beyond that of oil and some other things. And as we have now, we know some other countries, Western countries now, even rely on the influx of students from international countries, where we have students from different countries who go to the country and that form part of the GDP for those countries. Why will our education system not be improved upon? And years in tune, it will improve our own GDP, also at a time where Nigeria needs to diversify away from the oil and have a good standing on this. So funding of education would not, be a bad idea. I think there should be, a fund that should go into that. Remember the wake of the former head of state, Bacho, where we had the Petroleum Trust Fund, be utilized in several education sectors, the tertiary, the primary, and the secondary schools. Different interventions, like that. A state of emergency need to be, declared in on this issue of education so that we can have a better reform and not just all talk, but really action. All right, a lot to talk about because a lot is trending in Nigeria. But yes, we will move away from that now because we need to take a break. And when we come back, we will now see what we have on the front pages of our national dailies. To stay with us. Thank you so much for staying with us on Differences Television. All right, moving straight to what we have on the front pages of our national dailies for this morning. Yes, you can be part of the conversation, just like I mentioned at the beginning of the show. And you can be part of the conversation, and we'll be here to listen to your opinion on that. But yes, you can stay glued with us as the program proceeds. All right, let's begin with the front page of The Guardian. Right on the front page of The Guardian, they have how poor services, high cost, is a drug access for addiction crisis. And this story, it's a big one, and it's right there on page 3 over Kajuru abduction. It's there on page 30. Court proscribe industrial action as Wike sues FCTA workers. Rivers CJ declines to constitute probe panel against Fubara. And story is right there on page 29. Government pledges food security as UN says 35 million Nigerians at under risk, and the story is right there on page 6. Okay, moving ahead now to another story. Federal government reiterates religious freedom as a report cites 72% of global Christian killings in Nigeria. And just before they load the nameplate, of course, federal government warns against consumer extortion, orders free installation of 500,000 meters. And that's coming from, that's right, that story is right there on page 7. Another one, CSO knocks National Assembly on prolonged recess, warns Electoral Act delay threatens 2027 poll. The story is on page 3. And lastly, ADC affirms Obi Usman as strong coalition members. And the story is on page 3. And that's much I'll take on The Guardian.
On Daily Independent newspaper, Shell hides $20 billion investment in Nigeria after successful $7 billion deal. The riders, Tinubu orders incentive gazetting for Shell's Bunga Southwest project. Kudirat Abiola, Supreme Court dismisses trial of Al-Mustafa, details on page 29. 2027, Atiku should not run for president as sacrifice. Akim Baba Hamid, details on page 7. Tinubu post ambassadors designates to France, US, UK, Turkey, details on page 5. Atiku warns Senate against non-passage of Electoral Act amendment, details on page 29. Security engagement. We have that story on the front page and continues on page 3. Still taking more news headline, Nigeria drifting unprepared into demographic explosion. Gambari, details of that on page 6. Macro policies have secured Nigeria's food supply, Shetima. The story is on the front page and continues on the inside page. And above the nameplate, poultry sector fit to drive Nigeria's industrial value chain, stakeholder by Chief Judge. We have the story on the front page and continues on page 10. The much I'll be taking on Daily Independent newspaper.
All right, now let's take a look at what we have on the front page of the Daily Trust. It says leaders' verdict on Fourth Republic. All right, details of that is on the Daily Trust. All right, let's see. Tinubu post ambassadors to US, France, 2 others. Details is right there on page 28. Yes. Supreme Court dismisses Al-Mustafa's trial in Kudirat Abiola's murder. Impeachment. Rivers CJ declines to constitute panel. And still, all right, that much more. All right, just one more. 7 persons killed in Fresh Plateau attack. And that much I have on Daily Trust for today.
On Nigerian Tribune, Kaduna abduction. US wants Nigeria to strengthen protection of Christians. The rider, Southern Kaduna Christian leaders declare 2-day fasting over safe return of abducted worshippers. Southern Middle Belt Leaders Forum wants suspension through investigation of police officials who denied abduction. Details of all that on page 3. UN says 35 million Nigerians risk hunger after global funding collapse. Details of that on page 31. Nigeria's cashew export hit $400 million. Details on page 11. And on health, milk, whole bread diet dramatically reduce cholera infections. Experts. Details on page 12. Oil drilling at Ogun Waterside, Olokola deep sea port set to take off. Details on page 12. Tinubu seals deal with Shell to unlock job forex flow. Details of that on page 2. I am comfortable with PDP. Makinde meet with Tinubu at Villa. The stories on the front page continues on page 4. And above the nameplate, ambassadors. Tinubu post Are to USA, OK to France, Dankin Gari to Turkey. The riders Dalhatu is High Commissioner designate to UK. Details on page 27. And lastly, Fubara, Chief Judge rejects request to constitute impeachment panel. Details on page 4. The much I'll be taking on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune.
All right, now let's take another story, and that will be on the front page of the Nation newspaper. And it rise as this board print that talks about Rivers State, where the River CJ, gives condition to raise impeachment panel. And the writer's story is there and says, my hand is fettered by the court orders. And that story is right there on the front page, and you can turn to page 2 for the continuation of that. 24 Nigerians varsities in top global ranking. All right, if you want to know how many, you can turn to page 4, or if yours or your amameter is part of those, you can turn to page 4 of the Nation. All right, Nigeria's economic reform working, and that's coming from the IMF, and that's on page 3. And we've got another one. New agric focus will curb inflation. It's coming from the Vice President. Tinubu post ambassadors to US, France, High Commissioner to UK. Stories on page 3. US, Nigeria security talk yielding results. And that's a confirmation from the federal government. Fayose raises dust over Makinde's Villa visit. Stories on page 5. Sanwo-Olu sponsors get kudos from AU Afrima. And so we have local federal contractors get 152 billion naira payment. And lastly, police declare bomb scare in Lagos school false. And the stories on page 27, and there's more I have on the front page of the Nation.
On New Telegraph, US forces annihilating terrorists in Nigeria, Trump says. And riders asks Nigerians to intensify protection of Christian communities. Bandits abduct 100-year-old chief, family member in Kogi. Rescue Kaduna worshippers, apprehend kidnappers, Abbas tells military. As ADC demands probe into initial abduction denier. Egypt backs MNJTF to tackle Boko Haram in Lake Chad. Details of all that on pages 3, 5, 6, 29 and 30. Apprehension over pilot 50% pay rise demand. We have that story on page 6. Tinubu OK's posting of OK Are as ambassadors designate to US, France to probe Fubara, deputy. Details on page 4. Hunger crisis. WFP to cut food aid to 1 million Nigerians as fund dry up. The rider says needs $129 million to sustain operation over 6 months. WF Shetima unveils Nigeria impression confirmed. Study. Details on page 2. Tinubu approves taxes on page 20. Makinde meets Tinubu says, I'm comfortable in PDP. Details on page 2. Protesting contractors Kudirat Abiola murder. Supreme Court dismisses Major Mustafa trial. Details of that on page 2. The stories on the front page continues on page 3. The more I'll be taking on New Telegraph.
Now we will take a look at what we have on the point. And the writer says Ribadu meets U.S. envoy as Washington pressures Abuja on insecurity. Mother recount given birth in Kaduna, oil drilling in Ogun. And that one says police attack scare. Please deploy officers to stop Lagos schools. And the story is on page 4 and 5. All right, more story says CJ declines to probe Fubara. Speaker head to appeal court. Still on court matter, Supreme Court closes Kudirat Abiola's murder case, frees Mustafa. And the story is right there on the Punch. And lastly, Makinde rules out defection plans after meeting Tinubu. And that's much I have on the front page of the Punch for this morning.
On Daily Times newspaper, impeachment plot. Justice Amadi rejects Rivers Assembly request to probe Fubara. We have that story on the inside page of Daily Times. Return of 70-year-old American-Nigerian musician Jeffrey Daniel, symbolic, historic, Dabiri Irewa. We have that story on the front page and continues on page 2. Court stops FCTA worker strike, bars JUAC from disrupting administration. We have that story on page 3. And above the nameplate, Supreme Court dismisses Lagos attempts to retry Al-Mustafa in Kudirat Abiola murder. And lastly, Nigeria recorded 161.5 billion naira net foreign portfolio equity inflow in 2025. Details of that on page 2. The much I have on Daily Times newspaper.
I'll quickly take the business now. On the business day, I've got after 23 years, $700 million, shippers phoned Porter rises from the dead. And the writer says to end vessel financing. Another story talks about the federal government confirms the 152 billion naira payment to contractors amid protests. The story is on page 31, and that's much I have on business day for this morning. And that's much we're going to be taking on the front pages of our national dailies. Join us again next week for that. Yes, we will now allow for the news from our news center in a short while at night. And after that, we will be coming to talk about that topic for today. And that topic for today is, let me just put the pieces, will be on the topic, one chance winners in Nigeria. So you've been a victim, or either directly or indirectly, or we have experience or people around you. Yes, you can talk about these and have a conversation, right here in the studio. The number to call will be on the screen, and also you can don't forget that if you are not getting through because of network, yes, you can always send us message on via WhatsApp. We'll be right there to take those. All right, let's take a break now to allow for the news from our news center. And when we come back, Frontline will continue. Do stay with us.